So ever since I made my video talking about how I moved to Orlando, a lot of people seem to think that I am like way richer than I am. I think it's because a lot of people seem to think that because it's so expensive to vacation to Disney World, then it must also be very expensive to live here too. And if you're used to thinking of like LA or living next to Disneyland, then I can understand why you might think that because it's really expensive to live in LA. But Orlando, on the other hand, is not actually that expensive to live in. So I want to talk about how much it cost me to move here, how much it costs to live here, and what it actually costs to be able to go to the theme parks every day. Now, the moving costs are going to be completely different depending on the person. It all depends on where you're coming from, if you plan on selling and buying a house, or if you're just planning on renting. And I mean, you could find basically any price range in the city. But for me, I came from Salt Lake City, which is a little over 2,000 miles away. Now, of course, the hardest part about moving is getting all your stuff moved over. And to move a lot of stuff that much distance can be really expensive. The first option I had in mind was to do one of those shipping containers like pods, but they were quoting me around $4,000 or $5,000 to move everything. And so the much cheaper option I went with was looking into U-Haul, not renting a truck, because that also would have cost $3,000 or $4,000. But I found out that my car was eligible to just install a trailer hitch on and then tow a rental trailer. The hitch installation was about $500, and then renting the trailer from Salt Lake to Orlando was about $600 or $700. And so I did the entire move for about $1,200. Plus, of course, there's the cost of gas getting over here and staying in hotels and food and all that. But the actual moving expenses weren't that bad for me. But as for cost of living, Orlando is actually not that bad. It's certainly not one of the cheapest places like around the Midwest, but it's definitely not like the most expensive places like, New York City or San Francisco or anything close to that. Well, Orlando, Florida lands like right in the center. So it's actually like very close to the national average of cost of living. In fact, it's about the exact same cost of living as Salt Lake City where I came from. So that cost really didn't change a whole lot for me. If you're looking to rent a one-bedroom apartment somewhere in Orlando, I would say on the low end, you're looking around $1,200 to $1,500. Mine was about right in the middle of that. But there's a lot of like new luxury apartment buildings that have been going up lately. And those will usually go for about $1,700 to $2,200 for a one bedroom. So it's a really wide range. It really just depends on what you can find for your budget. But you should have no problem finding a one bedroom for around $1,400. Or if you've got somebody who wants to come with you, a two bedroom is usually only about $1,600 to $1,800. So it's quite a bit cheaper if you could split it. But there's actually a lot of young college kids, people right out of high school, who sign up for what they call the Disney College Program. Now, I don't know a ton of details about this, but I have met a few people who are in it. And it's basically like you come down, you work for Disney, you live in what is essentially their dorms, where you're always going to be sharing a unit with other people. And then I think they also have like certain college classes for the students to take too. And because you're working for the parks, I think it all just kind of pays for itself. And so I meet a lot of people, usually in their young 20s, who travel down here to start a new life and do something like that too. So I mean, it does help if you have money saved up, but there are ways to do it without having a ton of money already. So I paid for the U-Haul to move down here, and then I had to pay for the first month's rent and the deposit. And then of course, I couldn't actually bring everything I needed when I moved. And so when I got here, I had to drop about $500 on new furniture, and then another $500 on restocking my house and my whole pantry and all that stuff. But then I also had to go to the DMV and get a new driver's license and a new car registration, which means I also need a new car insurance. So there's another few $100 added up right there. And then I just pay like internet and electricity on top of my rent. One thing that everyone does call out as being way more expensive here is the insurance costs. And I will admit, yeah, my car insurance is about twice as expensive now as it was before I moved. But it was never a huge expense for me anyway, so I've managed to keep it pretty cheap. And since I don't own a house and I'm just renting, then I don't have to worry about homeowners insurance. So when the hurricane blows in, I can sleep easy. But overall, living in Orlando is just like living in any other city around the country. It's not like there's a lot of very specific extra costs, except whatever annual passes you want to get to the theme parks. And that's where I actually dumped quite a lot of money when I first got here. So now let me talk about my 3 annual passes that I use to get into all the theme parks here. Now there's 3 main competitors in the theme park scene around here between Universal, Disney, and SeaWorld. And all 3 of them have 4 tiers of annual passes. And I did a lot of research into all of them to decide which ones are worth the money. So first, let's talk about Disney World. Now, what makes Disney's annual passes so interesting is that they have 4 tiers, and all 4 tiers basically give the exact same benefits, except that the more expensive ones will have less blackout dates than the cheaper ones. So this is actually the cheapest Disney pass you can get, and it's because it only gets you in on weekdays. You can't go on any weekends and nowhere near holidays. But it gets you free parking, you can do park hopping whenever you want, which is crazy because a single day of park hopper passes at Disney is like $250. And this thing was about $400, maybe $450, and I can use it anytime I want. But the catch with Disney World's passes, okay, so the bottom tier is like $400, and the top tier pass is $1,500 because it has no blackout dates. But if you are a non-Florida resident, you're only allowed to buy the top tier pass. So the bottom three, being the Pixie Dust Pass, the Pirate Pass, and the Sorcerer Pass, you have to be a Florida resident just to buy it, which is such a funny and weird kind of incentive structure. But I guess they know how much people have to spend on like individual day passes. And so they don't want, a family who's just visiting for 4 days to be able to just buy an annual pass just to use it for that week and save money on day passes. So it really is like okay, here's your local price. We're giving you a break, so be sure not to pay the tourist prices to get in. And while yes, I do sometimes wish I could show up on weekends or holidays, that's why I have passes to the other places, which I don't have any blackout dates. So now let's talk about the cost of Universal's pass, in which I actually went for the absolute top tier pass that they had. Now there's no Florida resident restrictions on the Universal passes. The only difference is that residents will get $100 off, but their 4 tiers of passes have a way different variety of the benefits you get for them. Like for one, the bottom 2 tier passes are pretty much worthless. They don't even get you free parking, and they have a bunch of blackout dates. So if you're moving here by yourself, there's no real reason to look at the bottom 2 tiers. It's really just the top 2, the Preferred and the Premier. The Premier is the top tier one. And the Preferred really is just like, all right, you can get in every day of the year and you get free parking, as well as a few discounts on stuff. But what makes Premier so valuable, in which I think most locals actually do go with Premier, is for one, you get free Prime parking, so you can park a little bit closer to the front. But more importantly, you get free Express after 4 p.m. So if you've ever been to Universal, you'll know that there's the regular standby queue to get into every ride, and then there's the Express line. So if you have this pass, if you just show up after 4 p.m., you just have a fast pass to get onto all the rides. Now it only works once per ride per day, but that essentially means that if you just show up after 4, you can just come ride everything once and then head out. And I have actually noticed that when I pull up to the parking structures at like 3:45, everyone there is going straight to Prime because, once 4 o'clock rolls around, all the Premier Pass holders show up all at the same time. If you have the Premier Pass, it almost feels like a bad idea to ever go in the mornings because you're not getting your Fast Pass. And so when you're so used to having the benefits, when you don't have the benefits, it feels like you're being punished or something. So yeah, if you've ever been to Universal and you're in line at 5 o'clock and then suddenly a whole bunch of people just fill up the Express line, they're probably all locals. Anyway, this was easily my most expensive pass, costing about $1,000 when I got it. I did pay extra to have the water park included too, which I don't know if I'll keep doing that because I hardly ever go to the water park. But then the last pass I have is for SeaWorld, and they also have 4 tiers of passes. And again, the bottom tier doesn't even include parking, so it's pretty worthless. The 2 middle tier passes will be fine, but if you want to include Busch Gardens in your pass as well, it makes the price of like all of the passes nearly the same. So I figured it was best to go with the top tier, the Platinum Pass. And so again, with SeaWorld's Platinum, they'll also give you free preferred parking, so you're always able to park right up close to the front. It's actually kind of crazy because of just like how much I go to Universal and SeaWorld, and they're always putting the Prime parking tag on my windshield as I pull in, and I tend to just accumulate. I've gone through like over 100 of these things. They make a big mess in my car just because I just get so many of them. Anyway, the nice thing about SeaWorld's Platinum Pass is that it's also about $400. So the top tier pass of SeaWorld costs the same as the bottom tier of Disney. But SeaWorld's pass, they actually give you a lot of benefits. You can tell that sometimes SeaWorld is really trying to compete with Universal and Disney. And so they are just like, please, pass holders, we'll give you all this free stuff. Please just come to our parks. And so if you just pay attention to like their website, they will always be like, hey, we're giving out free rewards to all pass holders who show up. Now, just the default pass actually gives you free buddy passes, so you can just bring friends in with you. And for Platinum, they say they give you like 6 free buddy passes per year, but they will also just throw out extra bonus buddy passes all the time too, especially during the slow season. And so in just the last 6 months, I think I've already used like 11 buddy passes. But they'll also give out rewards like, oh, here's a free $10 to spend in the park just this weekend. Or just like, here's a coupon to get 1 free food item at one of the food booths during the holiday events. And so in the last 6 months, I think I've probably claimed about $200 worth of just like free food in the parks. So yeah, SeaWorld's pass really can just pay for itself. But if you're adding it up, when I first moved here, I paid around $1,900 total for these 3 passes, but that gets me in for the entire year. So it comes down to about $150 per month, in which I'm going to parks almost every single day. And so I don't know that there's anyone around here who gets more value out of these 3 passes than I do. But all of this is just insane to me because everyone who vacations here you're still paying, at least $100 per day to go to any of these parks. Like, I have some people coming to visit me soon, and they're like, hey, we should go to Disney together. And I'm just like, you're welcome to. I mean, I can get in just fine, but you guys are going to be paying a lot just to get in there. And it's kind of painful to think that, I spent $400 to go to Disney World all year, and then somebody coming to visit will spend that in like 3 days. And I almost forgot to add that when I first moved here, it was the very start of September, right when the Halloween events were starting. So I also spent another like $280 on the Halloween Horror Nights season pass, which I went to like 23 times, as well as another like $150 for SeaWorld's Halloween pass. So yeah, I dumped a lot of money when I first moved here, but now I barely even think about spending money while I'm out. I mean, my entire entertainment budget is taken care of at this point. Now every evening when I want to go out, I could just drive out, go to the theme parks, and then come back home without spending a dime. So the way that I added it all up when I first moved here was about $1,200 for moving expenses, and then about $3,000 on, first month's rent and deposit and some extra fees. And then like $500 for my car and license registration. And then about $1,000 on like restocking house supplies. And then about $2,400 more on all my theme park passes. So overall, I probably spent around $8,000 within a 1 month period. Of course, it's possible to do cheaper than that, and a big portion of that was just first month's rent and deposit, which you're going to pay no matter where you're moving. So hopefully this answers some questions if anyone's planning on moving out here. I would just recommend having some money saved up, but overall, it's not that bad.